Look at it. It's so little, it's so cute. I love it. Oh, we're gonna have some fun today. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show, and today we've got something real fun. We've got the little KLX300SM from Kawasaki, and I have been wanting to ride this thing ever since it came out, ever since I realized that this was the answer to the DRZ 400. It was cheap, it was fuel injected, it seemed like it was going to answer all of the questions that people have been asking about the DRZ, namely, when is Suzuki going to make it a modern motorcycle? The answer, never. But Kawasaki did it for you. Now, the real question I have about this motorcycle right here is whether or not it's going to be able to keep up with the big dogs in the Supermoto world, and whether or not you can really have fun with this thing out on the road. And spoiler alert, you totally can. Now I'm getting sick and tired of talking. Let's take the little Supermoto out on the Twisties and see how much trouble we can get ourselves into. Alrighty, out here on the road with the KLX300SM. How is it feeling on a twisty road? Well, it feels just like a Supermoto. Nice and light, very flickable, super agile. I mean, this thing, I haven't looked at the specs yet because that's not how I do things here. It's surprising how light this thing feels. It literally feels like I'm riding a bicycle. A bicycle with, if I had to guess, maybe 30 horsepower to the rear wheel. Maybe. It's so light. That's so nice on a bike like this. The lightweight factor is why people come to Supermotos. They're basically the lightest version of a sport bike you're gonna find. Now, what I am gonna say is that the motor, it doesn't have that Supermoto torque. Okay, I understand that this is a smaller motor, totally get it. But even the DRZ 400, which is, you know, 398 cc's or something like that, has a nice solid punch of torque. It feels like it's got about 30 foot-pounds. This just, it doesn't feel like it's got much under the hood at all in the torque department. That's a bit of a bummer when it comes to Supermoto life. These are super torque focused motorcycles, and if you don't have that to back it up, it means you're really working the motorcycle a lot when you're trying to get it up and moving. One thing I will say though is the transmission, classic Kawasaki transmission right here. It is so nice. You can just click through it, no problem. It's really easy to just snick through the gears. You know, let's see here, going around the corner, I want to click up. Don't even need the clutch. It's just so nice and smooth and very positive, honestly. Another thing that feels great on this motorcycle, the front brake. Holy cow, is this front brake great. They should just take this front brake system off of this motorcycle and put it on the KLR650. I'm telling you, that would improve the KLR650 so much after going through all of the work of putting a new master cylinder on and, you know, bleeding the brakes and changing and bedding the pads. I wish it just had this setup, because this is a really nice positive front brake feel. It's exactly what you'd want out of a Supermoto, so that you can really dive that front end down into a corner. You can just freaking bail on it. Like, let's see here. Yeah, and then you dive that front end down, it's kind of squished. It allows you to dip into corners nice. Dude, I love Supermotos. I love Supermotos so much. But I really can't help wish that this thing had just a little bit more torque. It really does leave me wanting. Like, I was in the wrong spot in the power band there, and the bike's just nobody's home, man. It's a bit of a bummer. I really wish that it had more under the hood. Just a few more torques for me to play with. Just a few. I'm not looking for this thing to be a 690 smc-r, but I don't want it to just feel so limp. But unfortunately, not every road is a twisty road. So we're gonna have to take this thing out on the highway. But before we do that, let's pull it over and talk about the specs.
Diving on in with the specs for the KLX300 here. This thing is powered by a 292cc single-cylinder engine, putting down 33 horsepower and 21 foot-pounds of torque. That really is not a ton of power out of this bike. However, it is helped out by the fact it's only 304 pounds wet ready to ride. It is so light that I can practically deadlift this whole motorcycle. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3. Ugh. I can't say that about a lot of bikes, that I can just straight up pick it up off the ground. That's really nice for this bike. If it was any heavier, it would be a real dog, but because it's so light, it really helps this thing feel more fun and more playful. Another thing that really helps this bike out is the seat height. Now, I did some Googling because I had some questions about it, and apparently it's 33.9 inches. I call bullshit on that, because if I mount up on this motorcycle here, I have a 32-inch inseam, and my feet are basically straight. So it feels like it's about a 32-ish, and then as soon as you sit on it, it squats down a little bit. This bike is so approachable if you're a shorter rider, especially because you can just tippy-toe it, and because it's so lightweight, you don't have to worry about it going side to side on you. Now let's talk about some ergonomics while we're here. It's a Supermoto. They're all super comfortable, they're all super roomy. The only real issue I have, ergonomically speaking, is that the seat's not super comfortable. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. Now that gives me a good opportunity to talk about my pros and cons on this motorcycle, and the first thing I gotta shout out on this is the front brake. I don't know what Kawasaki did here, whether it's the lightweight, whether it's the size of the rotor, whether it's the master cylinder. This thing stops on a dime. The front brake is so powerful, and it feels so good. It's the best front brake feel I've ever felt on an entry-level motorcycle. It rivals some Brembos that I've ridden. However, it is worth pointing out there is no ABS on this motorcycle. Personally, I'm okay with that because this is a Supermoto and I like to skid the back tire loose and I like to spend a bunch of money on rear tires because I've torn them to shreds. But if you're a red raw beginner, you probably should have ABS on your bike, especially when the front brake is this potent. Now, I do have to mention something I talked about a little bit earlier. The lack of torque on this bike is a real bummer. I get it, I do, but maybe putting a new sprocket on here would help. It's just, it has nothing under the hood. I don't get why they didn't go to 400 cc's. If this was 400 cc's, it would be so much nicer. However, it's still a Supermoto and it still handles like a Supermoto, and that's awesome. If you're out there and you're a beginner and you want to get on a sport bike, but you're worried about scratching fairings or whatever, or you're not sure whether or not you're gonna like it, just get a Supermoto, dude. This thing is gonna handle as well as any beginner sport bike out there. This thing handles great. However, one last thing I am gonna note, that rear shock, you are gonna need to upgrade that unit if you are about my size. Again, I am 240 more in my gear with my camera gear on. I'm asking that shock to do an awful lot. Speaking of a lot of work, we got to get this thing out on the highway and see how it shakes down. It's not gonna be super fun, I'm not gonna lie.
Okie dokie, folks. So we're out here on the highway on the KLX because we have to. And I'm not gonna lie, the highway feels like I'm asking the KLX to do the wrong thing. Don't get me wrong, it will do it. It's completely compatible with highway riding as long as you're not trying to go super quick. And one of the main reasons why it actually works is because it has a 6th gear. A lot of times you get on these little thumpers and they don't have a 6th gear in the box, and that really causes them to be buzzy and vibey on the highway. And don't get me wrong, this thing vibrates, but it could be so much worse. Now, one of the things that really kind of weirds me out is that this motorcycle has a it's got an aftermarket seat on it. It's got the seat concept seat, and seat concepts are usually really comfortable. And this thing, it's making some very delicate places on the human male anatomy very numb on this motorcycle. I don't get it. I've never really ridden a motorcycle that makes my entire perennial region fall asleep. It's very unique, and it makes me think that it would be a lot worse on the stock seat. If you don't have the stock seat, this must be a horribly uncomfortable motorcycle. Now, we're in top gear here, going up a hill, and you can see wide open throttle, slowing down. There's not a lot of passing power on this motorcycle. Now, it is entirely accurate that I am huge and this motorcycle is tiny. So I'm not gonna sit here and blame the bike for that. I'm asking it to do a lot by moving me down the highway. But, you know, it's not got a lot of passing power. So if you're thinking, well, I'm gonna commute to work and I live 15 minutes away down a major highway, I really wouldn't want to ride this thing for more than 10 or 15 minutes at a time, tops. Like, again, we're going uphill, and I'm just, please go. Go. Oh, we made it. Okay. If you're lighter than me, you might be able to get away with it, but I find the maximum comfortable cruising speed about 75 miles an hour. So clearly, the highway, not the intended place for the KLX300. It will do it, but only if you have to. Now let's pull this motorcycle over and see what the Discord boys have to say about it, because I bet you, like me, they've got some questions on whether or not this thing is really the Supermoto we were hoping for.
Now this is my favorite part of these reviews. It's where I get to go in and talk to the Discord boys, see what they have to think about this bike, and answer some of their questions for them. If you would like to participate in these reviews as they're happening, all you got to do, click the link down in the description below, join up on the Patreon. That is the best way for you to support the channel. If you like what I'm doing here, you want to participate in some of these videos, see live streams of the podcast and all sorts of good stuff behind the scenes, the Discord is the best way to do it. All of the links are down in the description below. Let's dive on in with Don ATX. Is the extra money for the KLX300 worth it compared to something like the KLX230? Yeah, I would say so. The KLX230, it's like, it's so slow. Yeah, this isn't making a ton more power than something like that, but honestly, when you're dealing with this little horsepower, every single pony counts. Sir Brapsalot, why buy this over a 300cc naked bike for the money? Okay, so I'm gonna make a whole video about this. I really am. But suffice it to say, Supermotos are a very good entry point. If you're not sure what kind of rider you wanna be, a Supermoto is gonna allow you to experience all kinds of different riding, whether or not you wanna take this thing off-road, whether you want to take it to a kart track, whether you want to take it to a real racetrack. You can do so much fun stuff on a Supermoto that you can't do on a naked bike. So if you're at all heeing and hawing about what kind of motorcycle you want to get a Supermoto. I'm telling you, these things are awesome. Ride Red, what changes / modifications would you make to the bike if it was yours? Different gearing, suspension, exhaust. Well, this motorcycle already has the RS2, which I actually really like this pipe. I had it on my DRZ. It's already got some Acerbis Bark Busters in the slime green. I don't really love that look, so I might take these off and just get some flat black ones. Other than that, I would probably just address the rear shock, get something that's a little bit more beefed up for my weight, and then just ride the thing, dude. Papa Peach, would you recommend the KLX300SM as a bop around town daily? Absolutely. This thing is a great bike if you're looking for something that's gonna get you around the city. It's so light and nimble, you'll be able to dodge traffic, pedestrians, potholes, babies, whatever pops out in front of you in the just kind of ever-changing city environment. A Supermoto is gonna allow you to react. And plus, the front brake on this, being able to stop on a dime, yeah, this is a really great city bike. And it's got a little rack, little baby rack. A little luggage rack guy. Perfect. Full Metal Corgi, is there a package where it comes with a sheet of drywall and a 4-pack of Monster? It has a little bit of that Kyle energy, it really does. I will say, despite being all Monster Energy green here, I do really like the look of this. A lot of times you get on a Supermoto and you're just like, these things are ugly. But I don't know, I think it looks really sharp, honestly, from like the front quarter, the front 3/4 angle. It's a snazzy looking little bike. Magic Toaster, how many times were you chased by the cops on the KLX? 0, just isn't that fast. Jake Smith, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much does this bike channel your inner hooligan? 6.5. So I really like the ability for you to just like hop curbs and do all sorts of silly stuff. But again, we come back to the limited torque on this. Maybe a sprocket swap would help, but I kind of doubt it. It's just, it's a little gutless, and that's a big bummer for me. I was really hoping for more. Now, there were a whole bunch of questions in here talking about how this bike relates to the rest of the factory Supermotos out there. Stuff like the smc-r, the 701, and obviously the DRZ 400. So let's get this thing back out on the road one last time, see how it stacks up to the competition, because I have ridden all of them. And we're gonna finalize our thoughts on this motorcycle.
Now, normally I start these wrap-ups out on the road. However, I'd like to take a second and just show you the stuff that the previous owner put into this motorcycle, because I think it tells a really important story and helps explain my feeling about the KLX. So, starting out, we've got some Acerbis grips here. We've got a Pro Taper bar. We've got Pro Taper bar risers on here. We've got new grips. We've got a seat concept seat, the Yoshi RS2 slip-on, and a skid plate and bash guards from T-Rex Racing. There's a lot of money that has been spent on this little motorcycle. I would argue that all in all, we're probably looking at, man, if it's not $1,500 worth of parts, it's very close. We're certainly over $1,000. Next number that I want to point out, 2,500 miles. This thing, it got all these mods, it got all this love, and then it got traded into a dealership. I think that's probably the nature of the life cycle of a lot of KLX 300s. The guys at AF1 were telling me that they see a lot of KLXs come in very similar shape. Man, look at all these freaking deer out here. Yeah, KLX 300s apparently roll through AF1 every so often, and they're all kitted out, low mileage, and in great shape. What that tells me is that people are getting the KLX 300SM, they're riding it around, they're having their fun, and then they get on another motorcycle and they realize, oh, okay, now I get it. And that's what I mean when I say the following. The KLX 300 has left me disappointed. I'm definitely, all I want is more. I want more. You know, this is a perfect gateway drug into the life that is Supermoto. And frankly, it's not a life, it's an entire lifestyle. It becomes who you are in your soul. I can't even let go of being a Supermoto guy, and I have the least Supermoto-y Supermoto in the Hyperstrada. It's still kind of Supermoto-y, just a little bit. I at least tell myself it's a Supermoto. But the KLX300, it's not the bike that you're going to keep forever, and that's a little bit of a bummer. I really wanted to see this thing be the competitor to the DRZ that we really wanted it to be, because let's be real, the DRZ has been on the top of the Supermoto game for way too long. I really wanted to see something that could go toe-to-toe with the DRZ. Sadly, the KLX, it just can't. If you ride this thing and then you hop on a DRZ, you're gonna feel that extra. It's got 10 more foot-pounds of torque, 10 or 12, maybe it's 34 foot-pounds of torque. The DRZ is just a better Supermoto. However, if you are the kind of rider who can grab one of these for, say, $1,000 off MSRP, because frankly it's $6,000, this is a bit steep. But, you know, you get it with 2,500 miles on the clock at AF1 because somebody spent $1,000 in parts on this thing and then they realized, ooh, I want a little bit more power. Then you're talking like the perfect gateway Supermoto. There's a lot to love in this package, but it's let down by the engine. If you do end up getting a KLX300, I highly recommend you don't spend any money trying to get power out of it. I really would recommend that you don't do that. If anything, I would spend it on stuff that actually matters, like the suspension. Because you're not going to coax any more power out of this engine. You really aren't. If you're looking for something with a little bit more grunt, I would just step it up to a DRZ 400. I really would. Now, let's talk about this thing relative to the rest of the crowd. So, the KTM is still the king of the Supermoto. The KTM, the Husky, the Gas, the SMC platform. From personal experience, I can tell you that that is the holy grail. It is the street Supermoto to buy, period, full stop, end of story. However, it's $12,000. It's an expensive motorcycle, and Supermotos are not meant to be expensive. Now, the DRZ 400 is brand new, is like $7 or $8,000. Okay, yeah, sure. But then you're like, I wish I had a little bit more power. That's why I love the 690s so much. Personally, if it were me, I would see if you could get a used Gas, the red one. Because the Gas, it's got the mag wheels, which are, I think, a little bit lighter. And it's a little bit more set up for street duty. But versus buying somebody's, like, converted project, go for the KLX300 all day, baby. And you know what? I had a good time on this, even though I was let down. I'm a little disappointed, but I still had fun. And this is the ultimate, like, second motorcycle. Throw it in your garage and have it be a thing that you putter around with on weekends. Yeah, there's a place for the KLX300. It's not the best, but it's fun. And with that, guys, I'm gonna call it a day. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.